Welcome to Public Forum. I remind all present that mobile phones must be switched off before the meeting and that the meeting is being recorded and live streamed. Please be aware we have a 5-minute time limit on speeches in the chamber. You will hear a bell ring at 4 minutes and then another at 5 minutes. If you could please wrap up your speech in that last minute, that would be great. We have quite a few speakers today, so I will be pretty strict on time. I'll also remind speakers that councillors may ask you a question, however, you are under no obligation to answer, and speakers are not to ask any questions of councillors. I'll also remind speakers that they have a 1-minute time limit in reply to questions from councillors, if any are asked. And lastly, please stick to the topic of your item agenda so I don't have to bump you back on course. With that, first up we have Dr. Raymond Curry speaking against the recommendation in item 8.1.1, budget.
Mr Mayor and councillors, my name is Raymond Curry and I'm speaking on agenda item 8.1.1, Financial Sustainability Reports. The public exhibition saw around 500 pages of financial documents placed on the website for the community to have their say. However, there was no mention of a water or sewerage increase on the website. The assertion that there was transparent and accountable communication is obviously debatable. The community engagement policy is to allow genuine and active community engagement. Where was the community engagement when many residents did not even know that there are 2 council websites? On 11 June, Councillor Smith stated on 2ST Radio that council had a problem with communication. At the April meeting, Graham Jarvis said that this was a complex matter. In complex matters, the community needs utmost guidance to truly comprehend the issues. There was not one council video on the proposed utilities increases. When Councillor Moylan wanted a town hall meeting to explain it all, you voted no. When Councillor Russell wanted information sent out to ratepayers, you voted no. Councillor Russell's attempts for a Shoalhaven-based model finance committee is repeatedly defeated. In comparison, Yass Council held community engagement meetings in order to explain the financial documents. 289 submissions were received. Had not councillors Moylan and Russell responsibly discharged their duties and informed the community, there would barely be any submissions. At the April meeting, the Deputy Mayor warned residents to, quote, question rhetoric that misleads and creates fear based on lies and misinformation, unquote. The so-called fear, lies and misinformation did not come from genuine comments made by sincere residents. Rather, it originated from the confusing and conflicting information which is your responsibility. The right attitude of councillors is critically important in solving council's financial challenges. For example, the March meeting heard Councillor Kent make it explicitly clear that he was bored when in a public forum I referred to Council's $43.4 million loss over 4 years. Today, you will vote whether to increase the water charges by 78% over 3 years. Voting yes means many residents and businesses will be hard hit. But rather than focusing on the community impact, Councillor Smith's top priority is running after regional TV stations to alter the social media policy advocating some radical progressive ideology. When it comes to community engagement, Highlands Opinion and the Southern Wire is doing an outstanding job. Amazingly, both are demonised by either council or some councillors. In terms of community engagement, a reasonable and informed person may well conclude that the community was badly let down.
Thank you very much. Councillor Smith, you have a question?
Thank you, Mr. Khoury. You made a comment that I had a radical progressive ideology. Could you just explain that, please?
I've read your motion several times, councillor, many times actually, and the conclusion that I came to, it was ambiguous, it was wishy-washy, it seemed to be drowned in victimhood, and it was very hard to make out what exactly you were saying.
Okay.
At the end of the day, an attack on free speech is an attack on all of us.
Thank you, Ms. Khoury. We're going to stick to the item, which is the budget. Do we have any other questions? Thank you very much. Next, we have Mr. Thomas Grant is speaking against the recommendation item 8.1.1, draft operational plan and budget. Ready when you are.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor and councillors. I am Thomas Grant, a resident of Hilltop, and speaking on behalf of the families using our community. I'm speaking to subject 8.1.1 with the capital programs amendments, in particular the adjustment to building and aquatics. In that proposal, there is a shift of the funding to the public toilet proposed in the Hilltop Park to go to the Gibraltar public toilets, Mossvale pool window replacement, library lighting, Barrow library lighting and window renewals, and Mossvale pool treatment renewal. The proposed toilet in Hilltop was not a new or unexpected project. It's already gone through the planning and development process and was approved and promised to our community to be delivered this year. The toilet was a part of a broader park project that was developed through the collaboration between Council, Hilltop Community Association and Heritage Rail. The residents supported the closure of the Rosina Street Park, which has been then shifted funding from that park to the Central Park in town. These resources would be reinvested into creating a better community and facility for Hilltop. Removing the funding of this toilet now breaks a commitment that was made to our community after years of planning and consultation. A playground without nearby toilet facilities is not meeting the needs of families. For context, when we go to the park, we're limited by the smallest bladder of the child. As soon as the child needs to go to the toilet, it's back in the car and home, which with young children is not very long. Parents regularly have to leave the park early because of their children and cannot wait to get home. School children getting off the bus are often in a rush to get home because there's no immediate access to a toilet. For context, we have no public toilets in an accessible location in Hilltop. The only public toilets that we do have are near the War Memorial Hall, or behind the War Memorial Hall, where there is no footpath access, no vehicle, or no pedestrian access whatsoever. The only way to get to this this toilet is to drive across town, across the main road from where there is no footpath, there's no crossings, and it's across the main street with little visibility. So it's not an option for our community. The lack of toilets already creates problems. Residents are resorting to relieving themselves in and near the park because there is no alternative for them. It creates inappropriate environment for families and is quite confronting. Council should be encouraging the use of our community spaces, not creating barriers that force people to leave. Hilltop is expecting to receive additional visitors through the proposed tourist train stop operating on weekends, but from the historic rail project, which is hoping to be finished this year, or July next year. Currently, as it stands, visitors will get off the train and have nowhere to go for the toilet, and this is expected to be a 3-hour round trip for people. Public toilets are not a luxury of a community, they are a necessity. It's essential for a community to have infrastructure like footpaths, lighting, and playground equipment. We understand Hilltop is a small town, which means there is less funding to allocate, but we already lack the funding of footpaths, Some of the roads don't exist or are in disrepair, and that's a harsh reality. But a toilet is a basic necessity. The budget paper suggests that removing this toilet will save approximately $200,000, which is a significant amount of money for a single toilet facility that's already gone through planning. The DA application itself states $102,000, so there's also a discrepancy with the funding that isn't clear to the community and has raised questions. The projects proposed to receive this funding are worthwhile projects, but they are, however, they are located in a larger population centres that already receive a greater share of community investment, council investment and services, which seems to be less about this toilet as its toilet, but more of what it stands for. The villages are often overlooked, but Hilltop is the 4th largest population centre in the Shire and is often the first one to be cut. And I'm sure other villages feel the same way.
Yeah, thank you. And I'd just like to say thanks to the Hilltop residents. They've sent a volume of correspondence through on that and appreciate that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There's been
Councillor
quite an
Duffy.
uproar.
Thank you, sir. I just wanted to say thank you so much for taking time out of your day to come to speak to us. It's very much appreciated. Thank you.
Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Grant, for coming along today and contributing to your community. I know you do a lot of work in the RFS for Hilltop, and it was lovely to meet you and the other residents the other day. Can you tell me, was it a shock to you, given that this has been promised for some time now, for years, to hear that it has been cut from the budget?
It was an enormous shock. I know a lot of people that put a lot of effort into the wider park project. So when we saw that cut, it was devastating. And that weekend, we had just had an incident where friends that were visiting, we had to go home immediately because they had a young daughter near the toilet. So it was a huge hole in the community, and it was very shocking to see it being cut. It was disheartening.
Councillor Foley.
Thank you, and just to reiterate, thank you for coming along today. Just to make sure that you are clear, the proposed cut is only a proposed cut, and we do get to make a decision on that today. So there is still a potential that there could be amendments coming on it. Just to make sure you're fully aware of that.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm aware of that, so it's good to hear.
Okay, thank you very much. Next, we have Dr. Colin Marsland is speaking for the recommendation, item 8.1.1, draft operational plan and budget.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and councillors. I'm not sure where the doctor came from, but anyway, my name is Colin Maslin. I'm a resident of Bundanoon, and I thank you for the opportunity to speak at this public forum regarding item 8.1.1, draft operational plan and budget 2026-27, and so on, as listed in the agenda for this ordinary meeting of council. In the preamble to public submissions and responses to item 8.1.1, Council acknowledges community expectations that all reasonable opportunities for cost containment, productivity improvement and service review continue to be pursued. As stated in the agenda, Council is experiencing ongoing financial pressures, so it is right and proper for Council to be reviewing and prioritising its commitments and expenditure. One of those priorities, for example, must be the Capital Works program to ensure essential community assets remain safe, functional and fit for purpose. However, notwithstanding the need for and Council's commitment to fiscal responsibility and constraint, there are a range of discretionary measures and expenditure in item 8.1.1.3, Draft Operational Plan and Budget 2026-27. These include, for example, CSP Outcome 1.2.1, adopt and implement Wingecarribee Arts and Culture Plan, that is Creative Highlands 2025-2029, wherein, inter alia, or among other things, Council undertakes to support the future of the Southern Highlands Arts Trail by providing transition funding and capacity building support to a local organisation or collective to take over coordination and delivery of the program. Council's one-year transition plan was implemented in November 2025. In the promotional material, this, quote, beloved annual event, unquote, was described as follows. Now in its 15th year, the Arts Trail is proudly presented by the Pop-Up Project and EA Experience, with support as our major sponsor from Wingecarribee Shire Council. With fresh energy, a passion for collaboration, and a commitment to cultural tourism, this year's trail promises to be bigger and more vibrant than ever. Whether you're a seasoned collector or curious explorer, come to be inspired by the creativity that lives in the heart of the Highlands, and so on. Now, the above is clearly hyperbole, which Council in its wisdom has chosen to ignore. And consequently, in 2026, Council expenditure has been reined in, and the Arts Trail is no more. Which brings us to another item in the Wingecarribee Arts and Culture Plan, 5.6, which was undertake a review of the funding provided to the Nonangola Regional Gallery in Year 1, that is, 2025. I note that, as stated in the minutes for today's Council meeting, Council previously resolved on the 18th of March 2026 to enter into a 5-year funding agreement with the Gallery from the 1st of July 2028 for an annual contribution of $500,000. In March, when that decision was made, and I quote, "Nonangola has welcomed over 200,000 visitors since opening the doors in October 2021. Now, I have been to the gallery on a number of occasions. It hosts some excellent exhibitions for which I and others would have been prepared to pay a modest entry fee, say $12.50. On current visitor figures, that would have been in the region of $500,000 per annum, thereby obviating the need for Council's discretionary funding at a time when Council is experiencing ongoing financial pressures. So, in noting the above, while in principle in support of item 8.1.1, I submit that there are some inconsistencies which perhaps need to be resolved, such as the decision to terminate the Arts Trail for whatever reason, while continuing to fund Nonangola Regional Gallery to the tune of $2.5 million over 5 years. Finally, I wish to applaud our councillors in their deliberations with respect to a 91-page agenda and 1,685 pages of attachments. To put that into some perspective, that is substantially more than the combined volume of the 2026 Defence Strategic Plan, the 2026 Defence Integrated Investment Program, and all 4 budget papers that comprise the 2026 federal budget. So I commend councillors for their diligence, their commitment to read and fully comprehend the documentation, which informs their decisions in the best interests of the community that they have been elected to serve. Thank you.
Right on 5 minutes, well done. Councillor Russell.
Thank you, Colin. I understand you're not a doctor, but you are retired in some form. What is your proper title?
No, I'm not a doctor. I don't know where that came from. If I was to use a title other than Mr., it would be Commander. Royal Australian Navy, retired. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Commander, I would like to thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Next we have Ms. Stephanie Vitala, sorry if I pronounced that wrong, from Denton's Lawyers, is speaking against the recommendation in item 8.2.2 for Wingecarribee Community Heritage Study. Over to you.
Thank you, Mayor and Councillors. My name's Stephanie Vitala and I'm a planning solicitor at Denton's Lawyers based in Sydney. I'm going to speak to you in respect of the proposed listing of the Berrida Hotel on behalf of the owner of that property. Can the council hear me? My client's heritage expert, Ms. Anna McLaren from Weir Phillips, is unable to attend today, so I'm here to make the submission on the basis of her recommendations on behalf of my client. It's important for Council to understand that the proposed heritage listing of the Berrida Hotel includes the whole of Lot 17 in the Strata Plan, which is not just the hotel building in its original form, but the whole of the grounds. Those grounds comprise an area of 1.4 hectares. and the listing has been proposed with so much as even a site view by the council. Lot 17 contains not only the original Berrida Manor, which is now the hotel, but also other buildings constructed much later. I just pause at this juncture to note that if the council has a copy of the Weir Phillips report from my client's heritage expert, which has been prepared in very short time, that report refers to lot 16. It should be lot 17 that contains the hotel. The primary basis for the council's proposed listing in its desktop assessment is the association of the property with Dr. Jessie Freeman, the Red Cross convalescent use of the property, and the 1978 Commonwealth Heads of Government Regional Meeting airlift. I ask on behalf of my client that the council give very careful consideration to the recommendations in the heritage report prepared by Weir Phillips, submitted to the council directly by Anna McLaren to council strategic planner Sarah Farness earlier this week on Monday, the 15th of June. If council has not had time to carefully consider the recommendations in that report, then I ask that the council defer the listing of the Berrida Hotel to enable sufficient time for a proper and very careful analysis of that report and the recommendations made. If there is some disagreement about the recommendations made, my client invites the council and relevant officers from the council to inspect the site together with his heritage expert. Having received notification of the proposed listing for the first time on or about the 18th of May, my client, through me, requested a very urgent deferral of the proposed listing to enable sufficient time for a detailed heritage advice to be obtained. That request was denied despite previous representations I made to the council, both in written correspondence on the 25th of May and in oral submissions to the local planning panel on the 26th of May. In the limited time available between that last meeting and today, my client has been able to secure a heritage report, and that report summarises and recommends a very significantly reduced heritage curtilage for the following reasons. Firstly, the overarching significance of the site is associational. It's not fabric-based. That's very important. It derives from the connection, as I mentioned earlier, between Dr. Jessie Freeman, the Red Cross use, and the 1978 airlift. Those values are not spatially dependent on the extent of the lot, and they don't require protection of non-contributing fabric and land. The identified significance attaches to the original 1925-1928 dwelling core, which is the central part of the hotel, the architectural character of the primary elevation, and the aesthetic setting from David Street. None of these values require the full lot to be protected. In fact, it's inconsistent with the heritage curtilage document published by the Heritage Office. The fabric evidence establishes that approximately 60% of the fabric visible from the front elevation is not original. The rear of the building was physically severed to accommodate a 1970s and 80s extension. There's been an executive suite which was added in 1987. No internal rooms retain original features. The council has not carried out a heritage fabric analysis, unlike my client's heritage expert who has. The test for listing of the whole site, as set out in the Heritage Curtilage Heritage Office document, is not satisfied. Therefore, a reduced heritage curtilage must be applied. The appropriate curtilage in this instance should be limited to the original 1925-1928 dwelling core, the front garden, and the principal approach from David Street as illustrated in the report prepared by Weir Phillips Heritage dated 15th of June 2026, which I hope the council has a copy of. I ask that the council accept the recommendations in Ms McClure's report for a reduced heritage curtilage and listing.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Have any
you.
questions? Councillor Moylan.
Thank you, Ms Vitala, for coming along today. I misheard what you said the request was for. That was denied. Could you say that again?
Yes. Pardon me, the speaker's not on. My client's the owner of a number of heritage properties in the Shire, and the study presently before the council includes another property that is proposed for listing, and he was involved and engaged quite cooperatively with the council in relation to that listing. In relation to this listing, the first time he was notified was on or about the 18th of May, and I made some very urgent representations to the council in written correspondence, and then I made an oral submission to the planning panel on the 26th of May, asking for a deferral to enable a heritage assessment to be prepared, which included a site visit. That was denied, and on my urgent recommendation, I engaged a heritage expert to try and truncate the time to have that report prepared, which has now been provided to the council, but only as of Monday. So my concern is that if the council hasn't had sufficient time to consider that report, which has some pretty important recommendations, particularly given the existing material before the council is desktop only, then I would ask that the matter be deferred. Otherwise, I would ask that the recommendations in that report be carefully considered and adopted.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Next up, we have Ms. Leonie Broughton, who's speaking against the recommendation in item 8.2.2 for the Wingecarribee Community Heritage Study.
Correction, my name is Leonie Broughton Challinor. I've been married since 1985.
Apologies.
Mayor and councillors and Shire staff, we speak in opposition to the inclusion of our property in the Draft Barrel Heritage Conservation Area, specifically the Glebe Estate Extension. We purchased the property in July 2023. The absence of our heritage listing, proposed heritage listing, or conservation area designation on the section 10.7 planning certificate was material and decisive factor in that decision. Inclusion in such a designation would have materially changed our assessment of the purchase. At the time of the purchase, the Community Heritage Study 2021 to 2023 was already underway, assessing properties across Bowral and the wider Shire. Despite this, no heritage constraints affecting our property was identified in the statutory planning information provided by Council. Our property was not included in the final heritage listing recommendations arising from that study. Despite this, it is now proposed for inclusion in a conservation area extension. This inclusion has occurred without any site inspection by a council officer or delegated heritage professional. A request for council to undertake a site inspection during the development and application process was also declined. As a result, the assessment appears to have been based primarily on streetscape interpretation rather than property-specific evaluation of the contributory heritage significance. Council's planning framework requires that conservation areas demonstrate consistent contributionary significance across properties, and that any extension is justified so in doing so it does not dilute or diminish the heritage values of the existing precincts. That requires clear, evidence-based assessment at the property level, not assumption based solely on visual proximity. The broader context of the heritage study is also important. The process began with approximately 250 deferred heritage items from the 2009 Heritage Survey, which Council chose not to progress in 2012. These were re-examined in the Community Heritage Study of 2021 to 2023, which expanded assessment to cover 600 properties, which detailed documentation for approximately 603 sites. Following independent peer review, the final recommendation was refined to 412 heritage listings, along with a conservation area proposals, including the Bowral precinct extensions. Given that scale, consistency of methodology is critical. The study was primarily community-based and it is in its preparation phase undertaken by local heritage volunteers and former Heritage Advisory Committee members working with council staff. While community input is valuable, New South Wales heritage practices require statutory heritage controls to be underpinned by consistent application of the heritage significant, appropriately qualified as professional assessment, including independent review. Council did commission an independent professional peer review reflecting the recognition of expert assessment in the necessary before community generated recommendations are translated into statutory planning controls affecting property rights. However, the inclusion of properties within the conservation area still requires property-specific consideration and contribution that has not occurred in relation to our property. Finally, the impacts of the inclusion are significant. Heritage conservation area listings affect property valuation, reduces the pool of prospective purchasers and imposes ongoing constraints on the alteration, maintenance and redevelopment of potential. These are directed and long-term impacts on the lawful property use that requires a high evidentiary threshold. For these reasons, we respectfully request that Council exclude our property from the Glebe Estate Conservation Extension Area, or alternatively defer any inclusion until site-specific assessment is undertaken by a suitably qualified independent heritage professional. Our property has been substantially altered over time with limited
Leonie, I'll
remaining...
just get you to wrap up in the next couple of, in 30 seconds, please.
Limited remaining original fabric other than the elements such as brickwork and timber windows. This further reinforces the needs for a proper on-site assessment of contributory heritage significance rather than the reliance on streetscape character alone. We are not seeking to prevent heritage conservation in general. We are only seeking that our property be assessed fairly and on its individual merits before a permanent planning controls are applied. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Russell.
Thank you, Mrs. Challinor, and thank you for your submissions to us to help us understand how these processes are affecting people on the ground. Could you tell me, has the draft heritage study impacted your development application process, and if so, how?
Yes, it has. It's been weaponised. The draft conservation plan has been weaponised. We went through over 2 years through a DA. We met with council, never mentioned. I actually asked the question specifically at the meeting, was the draft conservation plan going to affect this DA? I was told by the council officer and confirmed by my DA consultants that it would not. And that was on the 18th of November 2025. And on 24th to the 26th of November, council and our consultants engage in design emails, never a heritage item in sight, never mentioned. And on the 27th, the basis of our refusal is not only design things, which from what I can see is nothing more than can be resolved, but it was also brought up that the draft heritage conservation plan that was in the exhibition stage, still in the exhibition stage, up until the 7th of December, was used as a form of refusal.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Russell.
Oh, sorry.
Has this apparent omission in the first instance by council staff meant that you've incurred costs that you wouldn't have otherwise incurred?
Yes, we've had to incur an extreme lot of costs with consultants. We would never have bought the property. We would have picked up, I used to work for the government architect heritage section. I would have, after knowing there and having the experience of working there, I would have picked up my shuttles and ran the other way because I don't want the constraints. And that's why that section 10.7 certificate was paramount to our decision. Flooding I can cope with, and we did address that in the first DA assessment, but it's just money after money.
Okay.
And we're fixed income retirees that have been dragged through the mulberry bushes, and I don't appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Councillor Moylan.
Thank you, Mrs. Broughton Challenor, for coming along today. You strike me as someone who appreciates the heritage character of our shire. However, you would like procedural fairness. Is that a fair assessment?
Correct. You don't buy a house at 126 Barrel Street, Barrel, without having some sort of affinity with the heritage elements. In fact, it's all been stripped. There's nothing really left. There's more heritage items since I've been living there, reinstated, than there was when I was first there. And I actually support heritage. I support it, but not blindly. And the fact is that the heritage, even though we avoided the heritage listing, the heritage conservation plan is a pseudo heritage listing. So you're still going to get copped whichever way. And that's what the council staff had said to me when we opposed the heritage listing, we're going to get you in another way. I can't remember the exact quote, but that's what they told us, and they were right.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
I've got a follow-up question, two more follow-up questions. How long has the DA been from start to end, including the heritage piece?
Generally, I don't need a microphone, you might gather. It started shortly after we arrived. We went to a consultation program down in the council works, and the lady there that took our objection to the heritage listing and the conservation plan, her advice to us was to get it started immediately without delay. We went for a process of consultation at the front counter, and which was, I don't know, junior planning staff really shouldn't be addressing DA consultations because they really don't have the knowledge and the understanding of the complexity of where we were and what we were asking.
And what is the DA for? What are you actually seeking to do?
We're after a double garage in an area that's to the side of the building that has got no association with the house, with a elevated storage area at the back. But the way, when we worked on the 18th of November with the planning assessor, he brought us more understanding and helped us to compromise and to bring a better forward, which goes to support council's personal involvement in helping to resolve issues with DAs. When we did that, we worked through it all. You cannot see it from the street. The reason why it's separate is that we can do water harvesting, we could do solar panelling, panels on it, it could be self-sufficient. We've had the roof assessed and fixed up, and it would not support solar panels. Because it's the heritage, it would just disintegrate. So we thought it would be freestanding. The reason why it's freestanding is there's enough yard at the front to redesign the landscaping so you can disassociate it from the house. It's a complete package. It does not impact on the current house, and it does not impact on the gardens or the front fence,
Okay.
which was also listed.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much for coming along.
Thank you.
Next we have Mr. Graham McLaughlin is speaking for the recommendation in item 8.2.2, the Community Heritage Study.
Thank you, councillors, for the opportunity to speak today. I strongly support this community heritage listing and urge council to vote for the recommendation. Heritage listing protection protects places of culture, historical and architectural and socially significance, helping preserve the character and identity of the Southern Highlands for future generations. Once significant places are lost, they cannot be replaced, making timely protection essential. Before I continue, I'd just like to provide a brief background of myself. I attended school here, completed my apprenticeship in the Southern Highlands, raised my family here and spent most of my working life in the Southern Highlands. I was elected to Wingecarribee Council in 2008, serving for more than 3 terms and twice as Deputy Mayor. During that time, I served on the Heritage Advisory Committee, and in the last 2 terms, I was chairman of that committee. That committee was made up of an exceptional volunteer experts in their fields. That's the fields of history, planning, architecture, landscape. Being on that committee gave me the advantage of a fuller understanding of heritage, as I came to it initially with a little understanding at all. My wife and I only became aware of the significance of our contemporary home after a visit by the Heritage Committee, most notably by a prominent Sydney architect, that identified our house as meeting the criteria for heritage listing because of its unique character and design. I'm speaking here today because I believe heritage listing is a good thing. I don't believe it will have an adverse effect on my property. I'm also aware of the heritage incentive clause in the LEP with regard to heritage listing. The question before Council today is not whether listing affects your saleability, your renovation options, or your market value. The question is whether these places are significant enough to warrant protection. If a building, landscape or place meets the established heritage criteria, Council has a responsibility to act. Heritage protection only has meaning when it is applied where the evidence supports it. Across New South Wales, many communities regret the loss of heritage places because protection has come too late. When significant places are demolished, substantially altered or allowed to deteriorate beyond repair, an irreplaceable part of our history is lost. Wingecarribee Shire is fortunate to possess a rich and distinctive heritage. Our towns and villages have a character that attracts residents and visitors alike. The Southern Highlands is more than a collection of houses and commercial buildings. It is a community with a story reflected in its history and its heritage. Heritage benefits the whole community by preserving the character, the identity, the sense of place that make the Highlands distinctive. Heritage assessments are based on objective criteria and professional evaluation, not personal preferences. If a place meets the criteria, Council should acknowledge that fact and act accordingly. The role of Council is not merely to manage development, it is also to serve as a steward of our community's history and our identity, balancing present interests against long-term responsibility. Today you have the opportunity to demonstrate that heritage protection is more than just a slogan. By supporting these listings, Council can show that when a place is found to have a genuine heritage significance, the evidence will be respected and appropriate protection provided. I want to address the common argument promoted by some in the community and many objectors that have spoken in this place, and particularly at the planning panel. From the planning panel, the objectors here tonight. There is a little understanding and a great misunderstanding of the community of heritage. Listing as recently outlined by the chairman of your local planning panel here a couple of weeks ago. Heritage listing is not about increasing or decreasing market values of private property. Its purpose is to protect places of significance for the wider community. I urge councillors to support this proposed heritage listing. Happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Moylan.
Thank you, Mr McLaughlin, and thank you for your service to this shire and this community. You mentioned that there's often a lot of misunderstanding regarding heritage. Do you see there's an opportunity to connect heritage understanding from people such as yourself and property owners who may not appreciate what they see as imposing on their property? How do you see that disconnect being resolved?
Yep, thank you for the question. It's a very good question. In my time on council, we had a heritage officer within council. I don't believe you have one at the moment. So if someone's got a heritage item, they could get information. And also the ability for councillors, if you had an advisory heritage committee that had the experts that we had on, you could really find that a benefit to your planning panel, because as we've heard here tonight, people are concerned that it'll devalue their property, and really that's not necessarily the case. In a lot of cases, as I said, there is a heritage incentive clause. I don't know if councillors are aware of that, but if you have a heritage item, it only ticks the box when a DA goes forward. And when the DA goes forward, it gives you the opportunity to maybe advance something that you mightn't necessarily be allowed to normally have. So there is an opportunity there.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Russell.
Thank you similarly for your service. When you refer to the incentive clause, is that what you're referring to, the permissibility of otherwise impermissible activities, or?
Well, certainly in my time on council, items that were prohibited under the LEP, perhaps a wedding facility on a heritage property could be approved because it gave that incentive. So there is an incentive to preserve heritage. I mean, in the old days where you had one block of land and you had a heritage item and you could only build one house, what used to happen in the middle of the night, they would burn down mysteriously. So the state government decided a better way forward was to give an incentive to preserve what was significantly met the criteria as heritage, to preserve it for our future generations. So it gave an incentive.
Sorry, my bad. What exactly is that incentive clause? What does it say?
If one of your council staff was here, I'm sure Sarah Finazzi could explain that to you.
We can address that in the meeting.
Yeah,
Sure.
but there is an incentive clause that does support heritage items. So, yep.
Okay, thank you very much. Next we have Mr Dennis McManus, PSM of Wingecarribee Heritage Group, is speaking for the recommendation in Wingecarribee Community Heritage Study.
I'll start again. Mr Mayor, thank you and councillors for the opportunity to speak on this important planning proposal. I'd also like to acknowledge at the outset the huge amount of work undertaken by staff over the last 5 years, and in the case of some people, 17 years, to bring the proposal about. My background includes 15 years as a planner for Planning New South Wales and 25 years as a Senior Heritage Officer with New South Wales Heritage Council. I've been in the Shire for 27 years. I speak as the coordinator of a 13-person Wingecarribee Heritage Group. All are skilled in heritage. This is a comment picked up earlier, but we're talking about skilled people. They reflect the views of the wider community and of the Shire's many heritage-related groups, including the local National Trust, the Berrimah District Historical Society, the Bundanoon History Group, the Australian Garden History Society, the Highlands Garden Society, and the Exeter Village Association. Mr Mayor, the report before you notes that the very large community interest in the planning proposal. Now, this is unusual. You know, typically you've got earlier on today issue about rates. You don't have many people coming along to give you support. In the case of the planning proposal going before the planning panel, 53 separate submissions were made. It's pretty amazing, which does reflect that wider community interest. Sometimes rather quiet, and quietly making that submission. While only 2 speakers have been allowed today, for and against, there are many supporters here, and I request the Council note this large community support. You'll see people behind me wearing badges. Maybe if you just raise your hand as heritage support. And also in the adjoining video room, there are many more supporters. I only say this simply because it's something that's not normally recognised, and I appreciate the people who own sites and who object. They have a perfect right to do that, but somehow that voice gets through rather than the wider community. Our group supports all 7 recommendations that the planning panel makes to this council, and in particular 3 matters. The first is the endorsement of the planning proposal itself going ahead. The second is the early processing of the deferred items and newly nominated items. And the last one is in line with the strategic plan, the re-establishment of a supportive management program, heritage management program. In regard to the first one, on which the community study on which the proposal is based, it is the largest and the most researched heritage study ever undertaken in New South Wales. How do I know this? Because I worked in the office and I know what happened. It includes over 2,700 pages of evidence for all the items and areas across the state. It has been the subject of 3 major sessions of the local planning panel, 3 sessions of the council, including this session, a peer review, and 3 lots of fair and transparent and extensive consultations with owners following 3 major public exhibitions, 2023, 2024, 2025. Our group calls on the council to now proceed as quickly as possible. And in this regard, our group notes that many of the items in that study go back to 2009. In regard to the deferred items in the report, the report notes that these are to be processed within the next year, and the council has secured grant funding. And bearing in mind the delays to date, we call for the early processing of those. And when that happens, it provides clarity and certainty to the owners and the community. And the third item, I think a very important one, particularly in terms of the comments you've heard from objectors, is that the report noted that of those 53 support submissions, 27 advocated for an improvement in heritage management in the council. And the panel's advice to the council calls for a supportive heritage program to be implemented. It's really re-establishing a lot of things that were here 4 or 5 years ago. It asks for a heritage advisory service to be brought back, and I'd add the word free. It was always a free service, people not having to pay for a consultant. Good information being developed on heritage to explain the heritage implications, the implications of heritage listings and heritage incentives, question raised here by one of the councillors, a heritage education program for staff and councillors, a local awards, a grants program and a local awards program. Our group strongly supports this third recommendations and considers that many of the objections raised to listing would be removed or minimised by a positive and proactive heritage management being in place. We also strongly urge the appointment of a designated heritage officer and the reinstatement of a heritage advisory committee. It rather beggars belief that our council does not have a designated heritage officer. Many people live in the Shire or have moved here because of its great natural and man-made beauty. Because of our size and history, and up until the motorway, a protective distance from Sydney, we have the benefit of the greatest number of heritage items of any LGA in New South Wales. A lot to do with size, of course. Many of our...
Dennis, I'll just get you to wrap up in the next 30 seconds, please.
I'll be very quick, Mr Mayor. Many of our items are of state significance, including Mount Gibraltar, the Bong Bong site, the Berrima Village, the Don Bradman sites, and Hillview, which is now being managed by the King's Trust. Mr Mayor, the retention to date of this great heritage is no accident, and it has definitely involved past good management by the council. For this reason, it's hollow to say I support heritage, but not to take action to provide for its protection. The endorsement by the current planning proposal and related is the right step forward, and I'm sure it'll be a lasting legacy for this council. And I see the big grand banner up, the 2028 term of this council. This will be the big legacy item from my point of view. Our group is proud of our Shire's great heritage, and we look forward to working with council and with owners and the community to ensure its protection, promotion and celebration. Mr Mayor, I thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Russell. Councillor Smith.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Dennis. Just a question. You mentioned about the advisory service and the heritage officer and things like that that were at council before. Do you have a sense of why those things stopped?
Sorry, I don't know the reason for that. You will have to ask management as to why that happened. We're talking now, I think it's 4 years ago. It is something it's very important. Many councils do have it. It was a service, part of a suite of programs that, that my office, when I worked at the Heritage Office, we were able to promote that. They are jointly funded. You will get grant funding for it too, which is good, but useful. But the main thing is the idea of having a user-friendly place for owners to go to. And I do think there is a need for a very proactive and positive program, more or less to be saying to an applicant, within reason, yes, we can work with you to figure out a solution to your problem.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Russell.
Thank you. Mr McManus, thank you. I know that you have already saved council a considerable amount of money over the year through your services. In regards to that previous Heritage Advisory Committee, did you fulfil a function with that that otherwise council would have had to pay staff to do?
Exactly right. And of course, we're talking about 6 people. I know mention was made about volunteers and perhaps a denigration point of view, saying that they're not experts. Those 6 people were all experts, and they represented 200 years of work in architecture, in planning, in landscape, and in history. They're incredible. And as you say, that service was provided to the council free of charge. We don't begrudge it. The same with the study. Again, I've heard today about the council not having money for various things. The council, when the council set about reviewing the heritage items in 2020, it provided no money for the study. And that's why the Heritage Committee members suggested to work with council, not by themselves, but with council's then Heritage Officer, to do the work. And the council itself has valued that work at about $110,000.
Okay.
There was no money was paid for that.
Thank you. Councillor Molan.
Mr Mayor, I have a copy of my presentation to give to
Sure thing.
members too.
Sure thing. So just one more question?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr McManus, for coming along today and all your work in the heritage space for this community. With the program that you were referring to, the heritage program, would that include some kind of review process, an arm's length review process? So if someone, like the speakers we heard earlier today, have a concern around procedural fairness and want to dispute a listing, that they are heard properly and there's probity there. Have you seen that in your travels?
Typically, it's not something that would become before a Heritage Committee. It's something, of course, that could be considered, and there have been times when items have been asked to be removed. I can think of one in Berrima, and I suppose it did come across to us for a comment. You have to understand it's an advisory body, but that's possible. In relation to the items that you're seeing today that are deferred, and there are 20 in the deferred batch now, and to which council has got grant funding to review, they will be reviewed. Well, council will appoint someone to do that and pay for it. Yeah. Okay. So that part's being handled. But as for, review in 5 years' time, well, that's another story, I guess.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. We next have Mr. Rolly Wong, Planning and Development Manager, New South Wales ACT. Boral Limited is speaking against the recommendation in item 8.2.4, rezoning subject land from E4 to E3 in the Southern Highlands Innovation Park. Just get you to put your speaker on. Yep, thank you.
Like a similar speaker, I really need a mic. So my name's Rolly Wong. I'm a Planning and Development Manager with Boral. Grateful for the opportunity to address Council on agenda item 8.2.4, give you a rest from the heritage discussion, being the proposal to rezone land from E4 to E3 at the Southern Highlands Innovation Park, the SHIP. Some of you might know I previously worked here at Wingecarribee Council as a development assessment planner, including when the Wingecarribee Local Planning Panel was introduced. The panel, 3 independent experts and a community representative, provides advice on planning proposals to council staff and the council. The panel considered this proposal on the 1st of June. It supported the rezoning, but didn't support the inclusion of residential land uses in Zone E3, which is consistent with Boral's submission to council. So I was puzzled to see the recommendation in today's agenda to retain those residential uses, contrary to the panel's expert advice. I'll focus on one practical amendment suggestion to improve the long-term success of the SHIP and avoid foreseeable land use conflict. Boral would urge Council to consider amending the proposal to prohibit all forms of residential accommodation in Zone E3, which is consistent with the New South Wales Standard Instrument. The issue is straightforward. The proposed E3 zoned land adjoins existing E4 general industrial land, including Concrite's concrete batching plant at Mossvale. Some of you might not be aware that Concrete is a Boral brand. The concrete plant there, it's a lawful, established, long-established operation that supports the region's construction supply chain. Under the current LEP though, Zone E3 permits residential uses like attached dwellings, multi-dwelling housing, residential flat buildings and shop-top housing, which are all sensitive uses. In our view, the proposal doesn't give sufficient weight to the implications of permitting those uses at this industrial interface location. Introducing residential uses into an industrial interface creates a predictable outcome of land use conflict. And it's worth noting that the New South Wales Standard Instrument, on which all New South Wales LEPs are based, doesn't permit residential accommodation in Zone E3. The zone is intended to support employment and productivity, not sensitive land uses that might be incompatible with those productive land uses. So this is a local variation that builds conflict into the zoning framework from the outset. Over time, that conflict leads to complaints and pressure to constrain lawful industrial operations, even where those operations came first. That undermines both the intent of the SHIP and the broader industrial land base. It's not just Boral's concern. The local planning panel, as I mentioned, advised against residential uses for this reason, and Council's own report acknowledges the same risk, including impacts on 24/7 industrial and infrastructure operations. The report to Council proposes to manage this through DCP controls and development assessment, but that approach is fundamentally limited. DCPs guide development, they don't determine it. Under the Act, they have to be applied with flexibility. They don't have statutory force. That means a development proposal can depart from DCP controls and still be approved if the applicant convinces the consent authority that it meets overarching objectives. Once residential uses are permitted in the LEP, they can't be reliably prevented. At that point, the conflict's already built in, and Council's managing the impacts, not avoiding them. The simple solution? The New South Wales Standard Instrument already prohibits residential accommodation in Zone E3. Aligning with that framework will protect employment land, avoid incompatibility and provide certainty. So the choice is clear: plan proactively and avoid conflict, or allow it now and manage the consequences later. Boral would respectfully ask that you support the planning proposal, subject to prohibiting all forms of residential accommodation in Zone E3. I'll welcome any questions. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Cheers. Councillor Moylan.
Thank you, Mr Wong, for coming along today and contributing to the community and the discussion. Putting the technicalities aside, and I'm not dismissing them, but putting them aside, conceptually, would Boral and any of the industrial employers benefit from housing for workers in this E3 zone if it goes ahead?
Through you, Mr Mayor, no, I don't think so. There's a plentiful supply of residential land within an easy commute of all Boral's facilities in the Shire, of which I can immediately think of 4. And frankly, the proximity of sensitive residential land uses to Boral sites, which are inherently noisy for a start. They're within, of course, EPA emissions requirements, but they're noisy. They can have a perception of having negative impacts on the amenity of residential land uses. So, no, I don't think there's any benefit to be gained whatsoever from locating residential land uses near a Boral site.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Russell.
Thank you so much for helping us understand this item in more detail, Rolly. In regards to New Berrima, is the distance from Boral to New Berrima substantially different to the difference between, I mean, obviously there might be some with concrete, but is it much closer in terms of what we're rezoning?
Sorry, I'm not sure I'm with you.
So we've got new residential in New Berrima and the Boral plant. What distance would you say away is New Berrima from Boral operations currently?
Mossvale Concrete is isolated from Berrima Cement Plant. Mossvale Concrete, I would estimate, is probably 3 k's closer to Mossvale. The proximity of New Berrima is essentially there because the cement plant's there. That's why it was established. The concrete plant is there because the zoning facilitates it, as would the zoning of the area that's now proposed to be rezoned. And that's the issue. You're knowingly potentially introducing land uses unnecessarily that will almost certainly, I mean, who's going to want to live there for a start when you're immediately adjoining industrial land uses? But why facilitate that by including permissibility in a statutory instrument? I'm not sure if I've answered your question, but
thank you.
Yeah, that'd be my comment.
Councillor Foley.
Thank you, Mr Wong, for coming along today and sharing your expertise on this matter. Just a question, the tables in the planning proposal change. There's residential is mentioned in 2 places. So residential accommodation is mentioned firstly being as, I'll just make sure I get this right. So permitted with consent is residential flat buildings, and then prohibited use is residential accommodation. And so what you're saying is that any reference to residential accommodation, in your view, should be under that prohibited, not with consent?
Thank you. Yeah, you're right, and it can be confusing. It was the introduction of, I suppose, group definitions, I think was the terminology that was used when they were introduced, I want to say about 10 years ago. You're right. The zoning table at the moment indicates that residential accommodation is prohibited in Zone E3, but it indicates that specific types of residential accommodation, which I mentioned in my discussion, are permitted. So what that means, the implication is all forms of residential accommodation are prohibited in Zone E3 except these four.
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. Yep. Next we have Ms. Mark Wiebeck, Chair, Exeter Village Association, is speaking for the recommendation, item 8.2.5, Wingecarribee Development Control Plan.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Councillors. Mark Wiebeck here, Chair of the Exeter Village Association, and I'm addressing item 8.2.5 concerning the draft consolidated DCP. This is to commend and congratulate Council and its hard-working officers for the inclusion of the Exeter Village specific provisions, which can be found at pages 351 to 357 of the draft DCP and pages 1519 to 1525 of the annexure to Council papers. We are grateful that our concerns following the deletion of the Exeter DCP and the circulation of the first draft of the consolidated DCP have been addressed in part with the new Exeter Village provisions, in part because we acknowledge our ability to make further submissions during the public exhibition period, which will include the promotion of the Exeter Character Statement supplied to Council in 2022 over that of the character statement relied upon and prepared in 1995, and a proper definition of the Exeter Village boundaries. Otherwise, and as a final remark, supporting Mr Dennis McManus in item 8.2.2, EVA supports the recommendations of the Heritage Community Study. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Okay, thanks so much. Next we have Mr Tristan Ryle of Architecture Republic is speaking against the recommendation, same recommendation, and that is the Wingecarribee Development Control Plan. Ready when you are.
Oh, didn't even see that button. Afternoon, everyone. I'm Tristan Ryle. I'm a registered architect and director at Architecture Republic. I have 22 years of experience working with dozens of councils across 3 states, so I use a lot of DCPs. I'm speaking today as a daily user of the DCP and as a long-term Highlander who wants the best for my community. This DCP is the most important work you will do as a council. It is your legacy, and it will define what can and can't be built across the Shire for the next 20 years. Every house, apartment, factory, power plant, farm, and business will be governed by this rulebook. Replacing the existing 3,700-page DCP is a fantastic idea. What we have currently is out of date, inconsistent, and not up to the challenges we face as a Shire today. Sydney is coming for the Wingecarribee. I don't mean the tourists or the families who move here because it's nice. I mean the developers and the state government who will bulldoze it all to build apartment towers, new suburban sprawl, and power plants. This DCP is our first and most important line of defence. It is what protects the character of this Shire. From the second this document goes on exhibition, every savvy town planner and developer will use it to bypass the current DCP. I know an email was circulated to you last night by council staff pointing out a legal technicality, that a draft DCP is not formally a proposed instrument under section 4.15 of the Act, and that's true, I'll wear the mistake. I strongly suggest you do not take comfort in that technicality. In the Land and Environment Court, the moment you vote to exhibit this document, it becomes an official statement of the council's strategic intent and desired future character. It becomes a matter for consideration under the public interest test. It's not just a draft, it matters, and developers will use it. The question before you today is whether this document is ready. Let's take a look. Until yesterday, this draft DCP had no rules preventing construction on flood-prone land in the water. The flood controls were completely missing. 20 pages of flood controls were added yesterday at the last minute, not because the staff noticed, but because I spent my weekend proofreading this document and sounded the alarm to you all. This is not a minor error. The flood-prone land controls affect life and property. If 20 pages of essential flood-prone land controls were missing until yesterday, what other vital things have been missed? We need more time to check. After years of public consultation and hard work, this council adopted the Southern Highlands Innovation Park Master Plan. The draft DCP doesn't mention it. It just reconfirms the 20-year-old Moss Vale Enterprise Corridor rules that are so vague and out of date that we're getting proposals for fossil fuel power plants and plastic factories. Putting the old rules in a document dated 2026 and the new rules in a document dated 2025 sends a pretty strong signal endorsing the old rules. Again, this will be used against council in the courts. There's also no controls in this draft TCP for the height of apartment buildings. They're outsourced to the state government's apartment design guide. The apartment design guide has no height rules, and the state government can change it overnight. It's not controlled by council. It's an open door for developers to build whatever they like. The LEP, which was touted yesterday by staff as your backup, doesn't have maximum heights outside commercial zones. So, no height limits for flats. This document states repeatedly that John Oxley was the first to occupy the land, completely erasing Indigenous history. I've been raising this with council staff for nearly 10 years. I don't claim to speak for the Gundungurra people, but they spoke for themselves at the last public consultation on this DCP, demanding to be consulted and acknowledged. If you couldn't make that one simple change, which would have no effect on the planning outcomes, it's clear that no other public feedback was incorporated. And to add injury to insult, Aboriginal heritage explicitly excluded from the heritage study you're discussing today. Why? I haven't read the whole document. No one has. You're given 6 days to get through 1,700 pages of business paper. That's 6 minutes per page if you didn't sleep, councillors. In conclusion, all I'm recommending is a proper technical and legal check before exhibition. This document has not been proofread. It is so clearly not ready to become an official statement of this council's strategic intent for the Shire. It cannot become a matter for consideration under the public interest test in its present form. Give it more time and defer the public exhibition. My fear is rushing this. In 15 years, you don't want people asking, why is Bowral full of apartment buildings and factories now? It used to be so nice.
Thank you very much. Councillor Smith.
Thank you for that. One question, in relation to if we were to choose to defer, for example, before going on to public exhibition, what are your thoughts on what would be important to be involved in that process to make the most of this?
You mean in the, you mean in the process of a review? Yes. I think that's a matter for council to figure out what the best way to review it is, but at a minimum, a committee of the whole 9 councillors to review this and read every word and understand it without input from staff. And secondly, just like the speaker earlier who spoke about the Heritage Committee, there are so much expertise in this Shire, from planners to architects to developers to the public, that could give input on this and catch things like missing flood controls.
Thank you. Councillor Russell.
Tristan, I would like to thank both you and Jess, because I know you spent all weekend and I know it was late, on behalf of our community to help us safeguard this. And I also know, how much you care for this area and how much energy you put in. If there was a DCP that you could point council to as a standard which we should be attempting to attain in terms of the elegance of working with and protecting the character of an area, do you have anyone that you would recommend?
The one that comes to mind is the Yass Valley Development Control Plan. I wouldn't necessarily endorse every control in it, but it's coherent. It's 110 pages instead of 500 pages. It's understandable. It has place-based controls for heritage areas like Gundaroo that are as special as Berrima and Exeter, and it's consistent all throughout. And it was produced by a council with far less resources than this, and with just as much development pressure pushing into it from a big city next door.
Okay, Councillor Russell.
If we were to reinstate the former committee that I believe you were a part of prior to administration, do you see that we could make any improvements to how that was structured?
Do you mean improvements to the committee? I was on the Housing and Demographics Committee, which is not a perfect match for this, but overlaps it pretty heavily, especially the residential side of things. That, I don't think I could improve on that committee structure. It was a really good cross-section of the community, and we met monthly, and we gave so much feedback to, it was mainly Michael Park in the role, and from my discussions with Michael, a lot of that feedback was taken into account when he was producing things like the Bowral Town Master Plan.
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. Next we have Ms. Natalie Swinestone is speaking for the recommendation in item 9.1, strengthening council social media policy.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name's Natalie Swainston. I've lived in Mossvale for the past 8 years, and I have 2 young children who go to school here, and I'm an active volunteer in the community. And I'm here as a member of the community who is deeply concerned by what's happening to our information environment and the effect it's having on how our community understands itself. It's not unique to our beautiful Highlands. The same thing unfolding in our community is going on across Australia and the world, and it's doing genuine damage. And it matters now more than ever because the decisions facing us are seriously hard about rates and services, about what we prioritise, about how we grow without losing what we love about this place. And those decisions require us to be able to reason together, to weigh evidence honestly and to disagree without becoming enemies. A polluted information environment makes all of that systematically harder. Research released from global defence firm Thales in April found that more than half of all online activity is now generated by bots rather than real people. Think about what that means. When you scroll through a comment thread and see what appears to be a wave of community concern with the same sentiment expressed over and over, a significant proportion of those are likely not genuine people at all. It's manufactured consensus deployed at scale. Closer to home, in March this year, the Senate Select Committee on Information Integrity and Climate Change and Energy reported on the coordinated networks operating across regional Australia, systematically using local Facebook groups to spread misleading information, specifically designed to look like ordinary community concern. Some of those networks had documented links to political officers, and the inquiry found real consequences in the communities where this happened. Delayed infrastructure projects, distorted planning decisions, and the fracturing of social trust that communities need to function. This is not a fringe issue. Researchers in this area describe what is happening as an assault on the shared factual foundation that democratic communities require. And it's accelerating, particularly in regional communities like ours, because those are the areas that have lost local journalism that used to provide a trusted information baseline. Now let me speak to what I observe in our community. We have online forums in this community that present themselves as authentic community voices. They have thousands of members, they post constantly about local issues, and they have become, for many residents, a primary source of local information. But they share a set of characteristics that deserve to be scrutinised. One such group is run by operators who will not identify themselves. They won't disclose what interests they represent, and when community members post questions about the accuracy of a claim or the motive behind a post, those comments are removed and those members are often blocked. To be clear, I'm not talking about the residents who participate in these spaces in good faith. My concern is entirely with how they are run. In fact, last Sunday, I posted a comment on this group's post about this very notice of motion. In it, I pointed out that a group claiming to champion transparency might consider disclosing who actually runs it, and I'm happy to provide the full text of that comment on notice. But within 10 minutes, I was kicked out of the group with no notice given. I am not the only one. This same group will argue that they've offered opportunities for a right of reply to those they write about, and that may be true, but a right of reply requires knowing who is asking. It requires being able to verify who you're speaking to, what interests they represent, and in what context your words will be used. Asking an elected representative to submit to questioning by an anonymous operator is not extending a right of reply. It's asking someone to be accountable to a person who refuses to be accountable themselves. There's no correction when these platforms get things wrong, and there are no consequences of any kind of misrepresentation. That's not community debate, and it is not healthy scrutiny, but it is a very effective campaign. But you can't credibly advocate for transparency while practicing none. With all of this happening in the background, I want to say something about the people bearing the heaviest cost. Not councillors who choose public life, but the staff who come to work every day to deliver services to our community, who find themselves in the crossfire of a campaign against the institution they work for. The impact on their wellbeing is real, and it's a shame a formal policy is needed to protect them. But taking steps to clarify what council's obligations are to its own people is, in my view, a duty of care. So given the noise, the misinformation and the competing voices council is trying to reach residents through, regularly reviewing and strengthening how council governs its own communications channels is both reasonable and responsible. While I don't think Councillor Smith's proposed policy can fully address what is a genuinely complex and systemic problem, it's still worthy of consideration, because institutions that communities need to trust have a responsibility to model the standards they would ask of others. So I support any effort that moves in that direction.
Thank you very much. Councillor Champion, I think you were first.
Hi, yeah, thank you. Natalie, thank you so much for sharing your insights and taking the time to bring them to us today. Just before I ask you a question, would you be able to email through the reply to your criticisms that got you deleted and blocked from that online forum? I'd be pleased to table them in the meeting later. Thank you. You've clearly researched this issue in some depth and you've got data to support your arguments. You mentioned that orchestrated campaigns using anonymous accounts create this manufactured community consensus. In your view, how does this artificial wave of opinion distort community and the council's ability to engage with and contribute to our long-term collective vision for what we want our shire to be?
Unfortunately, I've got a time limit in so many ways. I think I've made clear that in the absence of a shared base of evidence, it's very hard for people to make informed decisions. And I think what we're seeing globally is a real sense that when people kind of feel that the community around them has a certain opinion, they're more likely to go in the direction of that opinion themselves. There's some terrifying data around exposure to AI-generated imaging that even if the brain knows that what you have seen is not real, there is a part of that which is imprinted on your brain anyway. So this is a huge issue. And in the context of a local community, you know, seeing this kind of sense of everyone around you has a certain opinion really influences the way people are able to reason on issues.
Thank you. Councillor Chapin.
Thank you. Just a follow-up. You made a point that a legitimate right of reply is impossible when dealing with an anonymous operator. In a professional media context, what specific thresholds of transparency regarding ownership and editorial identity do you think council should require before we consider an online platform to be a legitimate partner in official engagement?
I think it's completely reasonable for council to be speaking to people who have declared their interests and their identity. The group that I referred to in question likes to liken itself to a local letters to the editor page, but a letters to the editors page sits under a masthead, under a name. And this is not that. I think council should be accountable to the community. I think there is a lot of work to do for complex decisions ahead of us where council needs to explain its decisioning and its reasoning to the community. I don't think it has any obligation to do that of people who will not name themselves.
Thank you. Councillor Smith.
Thank you so much. And wow, it's wonderful to hear your thoughts and that you've really, I guess, fully understood the intent of this. So thank you. You mentioned about a Senate committee report. Is it possible? I haven't seen that, so I would love if you could share that, if that's possible.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was released on 26th of March. And it's actually very good reading. It was very bleak reading, but yes, I'll send it through along with the comment that I had made on the group that was deleted.
Okay,
sure.
Thank you. Councillor Russell.
Thank you, Nat. And I always like to, look at what we can do better to, rather than attempt to stifle free speech. In terms of the existing communications forums that we have as a council, do you see any that we could improve as a council that might help actually fix a cause, not the effect?
Look, it's just my personal view. I would say first that my reading of the motion doesn't restrict what anyone can say anywhere, and I think interpretation of it stifling free speech is just flawed, to be honest, because there's nothing in it that does that. As far as how council can engage, I will say I work a lot in my day job in stakeholder engagement, and this is a challenge shared by councils across all of Australia as the information environment that exists around them becomes more polluted. I think council needs to get creative. I think social media and digital communications are critical, and there needs to be opportunities for the community to ask council leadership and councillors themselves questions in moderated environments so that people who may not be acting in good faith can actually be removed from that conversation, so people who want information about what is happening and why decisions have been taken are being taken. That can be done on council social media channels. You can do Ask Me Anything forums that are moderated for an hour. You invite people to come in. There are lots of ways to consider the psychosocial safety of the people who are administering these platforms, but to actually give people the access that I think they want.
Councillor Russell.
Do you think, like one of the issues that we've been dealing with, Nat, as a council, is that we haven't had been having public meetings about the budget and so forth. Would you think that if we had more of that accessible in person, face to face, it might help channel some of the discussion to a very tangible audience?
In principle, I do. I genuinely feel for council because given the information environment I've described and what has been, in my view, a very successful campaign that frames every decision council makes as evidence of failure, which I think is quite unfair, moderating that as a forum is a genuine challenge. So again, I talk to what are the creative approaches that can be done to community engagement, what can be well moderated or facilitated, what are some deliberative democracy processes that actually give people information and help them look at issues based on merit. These are the sorts of things that similar organisations are having to look at to actually make this genuinely work and make sure people are informed. It's never a bad thing to meet more in person and give people the opportunity to speak, but I think careful consideration has to be given to make sure that those aren't captured by people with an agenda.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kent.
Natalie, thanks very much for coming along. It's very brave of you to come in here and, speak your mind. I'm very glad you did. You said that as councillors we've chosen public office, and that is true, but we haven't chosen what is going on in our community. Would you be prepared to just spend some time with at least us councillors perhaps that want to spend time with you to talk about a bit of a strategy?
I would love to. I'm genuinely passionate about this, and you know, the decisions that we have to make in the context globally and locally that we live in are they're genuinely hard, and there are trade-offs, and community members need to understand that is the case, and almost nothing is binary or simple. And the challenge is that the nature of discourse that exists online most of the time frames everything as an either-or. Nothing is an either-or. Nothing. It is disingenuous to frame things in that way.
Now, what do you think of the idea that comes across in some of these forums that if you work for council or if you're a councillor, you're just fair game?
I think that points to a really sad state of affairs in the world. You and the people who work here are people who are working, at least to the people working within council, from my experience working with other councils, working really, really hard because they care about the place in which they live under very difficult circumstances.
So as a councillor, I've wrestled with what to do with this so-called information. I've taken Facebook off my phone. I occasionally look at it through my wife's phone. If you were a councillor, what would you... I mean, I try and do my best by just realising it's there's an agenda involved and it's people who won't say who they are, so you cannot understand their motivations. If you're a councillor, what would you do with it?
I mean, I would think about, yeah, you have to think about your own mental well-being first and foremost. I would say that more often than not, speaking to people in real life is not met with the same animosity and bravery of commentary that it is met with anonymously online. So it goes to your question, Councillor Russell. Yes, if there are opportunities to do more place-based engagement, I think that is a great idea. You know, we tend as, you know, we're interactive community bonding people. Like, things get solved when you have genuine conversations together most of the time. So as much of it that can come offline as possible is probably a good thing.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for coming along. Next we have Ms Bronwyn Tregenza is speaking for the same recommendation, strengthening council's social media policy.
Oh.
No. I'm Bronwyn Tregenza, a resident of Mittagong. Thank you for the opportunity to speak in support of Motion 9.1, Strengthening Council's Social Media Policy. We've lived in the Highlands for 25 years, and I have never before seen this level of anger and disrespect in our community. It makes me so sad to read the posts of otherwise polite and trusting people who, swept away in a tide of discontent and often misinformation, deride and mock those elected to and working for council. Councillors, I want to take you back to the candidate briefing sessions that were held in 2024 in the lead up to the council elections. Those sessions weren't run by any old Joe. The people who addressed the briefings included John Rayner, who has the Public Service Medal for Outstanding Service and Leadership. John ran the sessions on behalf of the Office of Local Government. Giselle Tocher from the Independent Commission Against Corruption. David Parish, council assisting the public inquiry into Wingecarribee Shire Council. And the Lord Mayor of Wollongong, Councillor Gordon Bradbury, AM, presented, and so did Ms Pam Palmer, former Mayor of Lane Cove. It was impressed upon all who attended that the Office of Local Government develop the model code of conduct to ensure that councillors, and I quote, promote community confidence in the integrity of the decisions councils make and the functions they exercise on behalf of their local communities. They are to promote community confidence in the institution of local government. I ask everyone here, and those who are not, are you sure you have done that? Is the community of the Southern Highlands more confident in our council's decisions because of what you have posted on social media and the forums in which you have shared those posts? In those sessions, the question was directly asked, what do you do if you are an elected councillor and you strongly disagree on an issue but are voted down? The advice was that once a decision was resolved via a vote, councillors have a duty to communicate the decision in a way that promotes community understanding and confidence. They reassured prospective candidates that the minutes of council meetings clearly show the record of how each councillor votes. The model social media policy published by the Office of Local Government in 2022 includes the guideline 4.1, and it says that councillors may explain why they voted on a matter in the way that they did, but they must uphold and accurately represent the policies and decisions of the council's governing body, as per section 232(1)(f) of the Local Government Act in 1993. Clause 7.6H of the Model Code of Conduct advises councillors also need to be aware of the duty they owe council staff under the Work Health and Safety Act 2011 to take reasonable care that their acts or omissions do not adversely affect the health and safety of other persons. Sometimes I read the post of councillors and I think, fair enough, they're just calling out what's not up to scratch. But if we transfer what is posted to our own situations, we would all see it differently. I work at a university. I convene masters and undergraduate units in the teacher education program. If the dean of our faculty put a post out on social media saying the type of things that are said in relation to my work, I'd be devastated. It would cause me tremendous harm. There are mechanisms for lifting the performance of staff, and social media posts are not one of them. Councillors, we do not want to be the council no one wants to work at because it's not worth the emotional toll of constant criticism and derision broadcast to thousands of people every day. We want the best and brightest people lining up to serve our community, and we want to keep them. We also don't want ratepayer dollars spent on stress leave and compensation for employees who are already feeling that strain. I hope our council adopts the standards set by other public entities that comment is only provided to social media groups if the administrators appear on the electoral roll. It ensures that there is someone with whom the buck stops if an instance of harm occurs. I also hope the new policy will place the same constraints on the use of footage from council meetings that the Legislative Assembly and the Legislative Council of the New South Wales Parliament does on the use of footage of public inquiries and budget estimates. That is that you do not use the material to misrepresent councillors, and your use of the extracts is fair, accurate and not misleading. This motion isn't asking the councillors to stop sharing their good work online. It just asks for further development of a social media policy to harness the benefits and minimise the harms of this important technology.
Thank you. Councillor Farrell.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for coming along, and well said.
Okay, anyone else have any questions? Councillor Kent.
Bronwyn, thanks for coming along. I recommend you don't look at Facebook tonight. You're probably just going to get a bagging, but thanks very much for being so brave. Now, you mentioned that it's your view that there's certain councillors that post things that could affect the work health and safety of some of council staff. Are you talking about our shire?
I am talking about our Shire, and I'm happy to share details of that in private because you would know, if you've been in leadership, you would know it's praise in public and correct in private. And I also like to live by the standard of be the woman who straightens another woman's crown without ever letting everybody know it was crooked in the first place. So, yeah, I'm happy to have those conversations about the particular posts, and I think I've sort of alluded to some of that in what I've spoken about. Okay. I guess what I would also like to add is engagement by a councillor in the kinds of forums that we see and we've heard described is, from my point of view, that's an endorsement of them.
Okay, Councillor Russell.
Thank you, Bronwyn, and I would also like to thank you because I know we've had many interesting conversations online and you've been a part of the solution that shows that respectful discussion can happen. I would like to ask you the same question as I asked Nat Swainston. Is there any way that you perceive council could improve its recommendations in a non-online capacity that might ameliorate some of the impacts of people not feeling their voices are heard?
I think, I actually think that there are a lot of structures and opportunities to provide feedback to council. We just often don't use them. It takes a lot of energy and effort. There's a lot more energy and effort in getting in your car and getting to some kind of briefing or event, visiting the council's webpage than there is on opening up your Facebook account, you know, and scrolling through. And I think that's the problem. I'm not sure that it's that there's nothing there. It's just that one of those things is in your face. I mean, I spend a fair bit of time on Facebook, but as an educator, as someone who trains new teachers, the place I spend most of my time on Facebook is actually beautifully moderated sites for beginning teachers, so Australian primary teachers or Technology Teachers Australia. And so I act like the agony aunt, answering all the questions that they have about their teaching performance assessment and all that kind of stuff. You sort of share some wisdom. I open up to engage in those forums to do some good in the world, and Highlands Opinion, wasn't the local Facebook groups that I'm sure we're all aware of. They turn up. It's pushed onto you. The algorithm, because there's so much anger in them, it's pushed onto you. So, because I live in the Southern Highlands, because I can't avoid it. It's in my face all the time. In terms of forums that are face-to-face, sometimes it feels like people are, again, they're often organised, and if something's coming up, you see it on those social media sites. It's kind of like come and gang up on the people who are there. There's not a good motive. There's a kind of a bringing people together. So whatever that we do have, it really needs to be structured. It needs to be well organised, and it needs to be, there's plenty of theory that sits around how we get a good democratic response from our community.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you. Next we have Mr. Paddy Moylan of the Southern Wire is speaking against the recommendation, the same recommendation of strengthening council social media policy. Ready when you are.
Sorry, my legs are nearly broken from standing up for 2 hours. Just give me a second. Sorry, age is getting to me. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, councillors, those who don't know me, my name is Paddy, and to coin a phrase, I'm here to help. I'm the publisher of the Southern Wire Regional News. I come before you to work together. Your slogan is, "We're with you." But just some housekeeping. The Mayor has actually blocked me and our publication on social media. The Southern Wire publishes public interest news journalism across southern New South Wales. Many publications are closing down these days. The community, however, has an insatiable demand for hyper-local news. Councillor Smith, in her motion, refers to news deserts. Correctly. The Public Interest Journalism Institute has published a lot of research about that. An underserved area is what we're in, and that's where locals lack access to news from more than one publisher. The Southern Wire is now growing. Our primary way of accessing our news is on our website. The costs of printing are just not there anymore, so it's a website-based publication that puts the stories then onto social media for further brand awareness. We have about 500,000 views a month throughout social media, and we have about, in May, we had 40,000 dedicated individuals reading news on the website. We are a member of LENA, the industry body. We're bound by the Australian Press Council, and I'm also a member of the National Press Club. We are not faceless. I've got a big fat face right here. Everybody can see it. We have a strong editorial policy. The ABC legal team have helped us with some stories that may or may not have involved council in the past, so we've got that access to help there. We have qualified, experienced and award-winning journalists. They have a face. One of them, I think, is in the gallery. He may have been punted to the backbench out there, Stuart. So, Mayor, yes, we will publish stories if it's in the public interest, where you stab a basketball or if there's drawings on the whiteboard that are in the public interest. But we publish many more stories where positive things are happening. For instance, Mr McCabe would be aware of this. We published a story last year where council got a very significant win in the court and received a significant sum of money as a fine. I believe we were the only ones that published that story. If we weren't around, that story would not have existed. We have journalists attending council meetings and events that are often not reported elsewhere. But so far, my journalists have been completely ignored by the Mayor and the General Manager. There have been a couple of other councillors, and I'll give some credit to Councillor Champion and Councillor Smith, I believe, recently, who have engaged. There's other councillors that I thank and staff who engage with us, perhaps behind the scenes. But when the council leadership doesn't engage, it means we don't hear, we're not able to tell the community about the positive stories. We don't get your media releases. Commercially, that's great because it creates more news. But I'm not interested in a headline. I'm interested in good outcomes for this shire. In contrast to what I just said, our local state MPs, Ms Tuckerman and Ms Hannon, both engage with us. All other councils engage with us. We've recently received a letter of support from the Mayor in the area. We engage with courts, we engage with the politicians, ministers, the Premier. Everyone engages with us. And yes, we do publish exclusives where documents are leaked to us, which is prone to happen, like the Wolves story that we did recently. So I'd implore council and those who make the decisions in this place to understand one thing. The media are not the PR department of council. The thing is, provided stories are factual, not defamatory, and are in the public interest, then we are doing our job. If there was an award for words, I would give it to Councillor Smith. Councillor Smith says in her motion, as a council, we must do what we can to protect and enhance meaningful debate and true public participation in the online forum. And I agree. I've got about 20 seconds, man. Sure. On this motion, what I say is changes to your social media policy won't lead to a change in community sentiment. What will lead to a change in community sentiment is hard work, listening to and representing the community, and being accountable to the media. So what I say is focus on the job that you have to focus on, the garbage, the roads, keeping the fees down, listening to the community on Bowral South and Repoly, and engage with the media. Give it a try, because I may just be right. In conclusion, we just want to do our job and inform the community, and it's over to you where we go from here, and I hope I've helped.
Thank you. Okay, we have questions. Councillor Russell.
Thank you, Paddy and Mr Moylan. We know that independent oversight supports us all to be high functioning. In that regard, is there anyone who oversees you? Like, are you responsible, accountable to ACMA, for example?
If we're talking at home, I think she just left the room. But in terms of public bodies, yeah, it's a good question, Councillor. So ACMA is not the regulator for us. The regulator for us is the Australian Press Council, and we pay to be a member of that. If anyone thinks we've done the wrong thing, you go and complain to the Press Council, they'll investigate it and deal with us if we've done the wrong thing. But no, ACMA is not the regulator for us. Thanks for the question.
Thank you. Councillor Moylan. Sorry, Councillor Champion.
Oh, okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr Moylan, for attending today. The background of Councillor Smith's notice of motion states that the community is being duped by a lack of transparency. Does the Southern Wire include a standing disclaimer on every article relating to council business, stating that the publisher is the spouse of a sitting councillor? And if not, do you agree with the expressed opinions in Councillor Smith's motion?
Thank you, Councillor Champion. So I'll address the question this way, and I will answer the question. We have a whole page on the website about us and a big fat picture of me and our journalists. The editorial policy we have means I don't engage in any stories about council. The journalist, Stuart, who's an extremely senior award-winning journalist, publishes those stories himself. Recently, where there was a story that was relevant to my wife, we did put a disclaimer at the bottom of that one. So certainly that is something that we do. But again, I'm here, I'm everywhere. Everyone knows that makes the inquiries who's behind the Southern Wire. But yes, that is something that we do where it's relevant there.
Thank you. And with respect to your comments about Mr Carlos, I have appreciated his commentary and his journalism, and I just want to say that, you know, I'm not referring to his work at all when I'm asking you these questions. On the 26th of May, the Southern Wire published an article quoting Councillor Moylan's criticisms of the Mayor and calling for his resignation, but the article did not note that you, the editor of the publication, are Councillor Moylan's spouse. This omission doesn't appear to meet basic editorial and journalistic standards, and you mentioned that you pay to be a member of the Press Council. Would you be willing to include a standing disclosure on all council-related articles in the Southern Wire relating your relationship with your wife, Councillor Moylan, to ensure the community has full context when consuming your news?
It's an interesting question, Councillor. So, as I said, and I'm also a lawyer for 25 years, so we do have very strong editorial policies in place, and as I said, I don't get involved in the stories about council, but if he's reporting on something that happens in this place, it's reporting what's happened, and I think you'll probably agree, and I don't remember the story, but I'm sure you'll agree that the body of work was simply reporting what happened. We don't do opinion unless it's clearly labelled opinion. But certainly I'm happy to take that on board. As I said, we've done it where it's related. And to be perfectly frank, we try and avoid, if you look through, there's been stories that we won't do because it may involve her, so we tend to do it to make sure it's not a promotional piece, that it's editorial when it relates to a council meeting or something like that.
Thank you. Just one more quick question. Has the Southern Wire ever published an article critical of Councillor Moylan?
I don't know. I mean, my instructions to the team are that you report what you've got to report. And quite frankly, if I told them anything else, they wouldn't work for me, because particularly Stuart is award-winning, a very serious senior journalist, and if I told him something other than do your job the way you want to do it, he wouldn't be working for me, and then we wouldn't have a publication.
Okay, Councillor Russell.
Thank you, Mr. Moylan, because that explanation I think is going to be helpful to have on record. This conversation is generally about how we're using social media and how social media is evolving. I always like to get different perspectives and also make sure that I'm dealing with the cause of issues. How do you see that the situation has evolved with the online Facebook group that is being referred to?
Thank you, Councillor. And yeah, it's important to say too, I have my own personal opinions of what's going on in here. And it's probably a good thing for the Mayor that I do have this publication, because I'm completely silent now as to what my personal views are about what's going on here. But on your question, and I apologise for the preamble, the social media world has changed. I know the group that you're referring to, we get a lot of stories from there by reading people's comments and then going behind and investigating things. Look, they provide a service to the community. If someone thinks they're doing a bad job, go and start a new one. Go and start a new one. Council could run one. But I think public forums is the way to go, because if we get the community together, I mean, the speakers here today have just been fantastic, every single one of them. But yes, social media is changing. There do need to be appropriate safeguards in place. They've chosen to be a letters to the editor type of, and I heard what the councillor said, but or the speaker, they choose to be a letters to the editor type of publication. Who's behind it? I don't know. It's never really worried me over the couple of years that I've been aware of it, but people can engage or not engage.
Thank you. Councillor Kent.
Sorry, Councillor.
Thanks, Paddy. Thanks for coming along. We're talking probably broadly about social media today. Are you comfortable talking about a Facebook page called Stop Barrel South?
Of course.
No, I understand.
Sorry.
I understand you're the admin or the editor of it, or you're the host of it, sort of thing?
I'm not Robert. Sorry? I thought you called me Robert.
No, I'm trying to ascertain your role in Stop Barrel South.
As has been disclosed and is very clearly on that Facebook page. And in fact, I'll be joining Judy Hannon in a couple of weeks to talk about this in a public forum. So everyone's invited on to come along to that, because yes, that is something that that I have a strong personal view about. But you'll see the paper or the publication has hardly ever talked about Barrel South. But come along, Mr. Kent, Councillor Kent. It'll be a good night with Judy Hannon.
So earlier, I've seen the Southern Wire. I do agree there's some newsworthiness on Southern Wire. You talked about standards that are applied to Southern Wire. Do you apply the same standards to Stop Barrel South Facebook page?
Well, that is not a news publication. When you start a news publication, you do your editorial policy, you join the industry group. Stop Barrel South is open to anyone to come and exchange opinions on it. And I'm interested in hearing your view on that, Councillor Kent. But again, come along, join Judy Hannon, let's have a great night together and talk about it, because that is a big issue in the community, but it's not a newspaper.
Okay.
So, last question. Oh, two more. So, are you saying there should be different standards applied to the Southern Wire versus Stop Barrel South?
The Southern Wire is a news publication that is actually it's a news publication. It's not a Facebook group. I'm sure you're on Facebook during the campaign. during your campaign. You can start a Facebook group. Anyone can start a Facebook group, but it's not a news publication. There's if I could just finish, Councillor, there's completely different standards that apply to a news publication. The Mayor's not running a news publication on social media, for instance. He doesn't have the guidelines and policies that we do with the Southern Wire, does he?
So you'd say stop stop Barrel South, pretty much anything goes then?
I didn't say that, Councillor.
Okay. I'd like to just read something from Stop Barrel South. And
so there's no point in words, but look, we're going to ask Councillor
You can't badger the witness. I mean, I'm happy. This is enjoyable. This is enjoyable. Keep going.
Go ahead, Councillor Smith.
Thank you. Thank you, Patty. And really great to hear that the Southern Wire is actually focused on hyperlocal and public interest news journalism. That is actually exactly what we need. And I'm grateful that you've understood, well, I feel you've understood the intent of this. We need to support more local journalism and we need good forums. So my question to you is just, and I want to clarify around the faceless point, to clarify that I was not speaking about you, just so that...
Councillor, I'm aware of that, and I think you're aware of Stuart's article that was extremely factual about that situation.
And I think it was fantastic to see on such an emotional issue as this. Both sides. Just one question. I noticed that I do believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, that do you or does Southern Wire post on, I'll name it, Highlands Opinion, do you post on that forum?
Councillor Smith, maybe once, but I noticed they have shared some of our stories. Like I think even maybe yesterday I noticed they shared one, but you'll see how that's shared. I can't encourage it, I can't stop it, but again, bring it on. Everybody share the Southern Wire on your social media pages. That'll be fantastic. Thank you, Councillor.
Councillor Foley.
The previous speakers described quite accurately and with a lot of data to back it up, the very real impact and risks to people's well-being due to the polluted online information environment born out of social media and other online forums. In your opening comments about you being blocked and your website's Facebook pages being blocked on Facebook, do you accept that individuals, including councillors, have the right to manage their own social media pages in order to protect our psychosocial wellbeing?
Thank you for the question, Deputy Mayor. So, I do, of course. That's the first point. The second point is this. The Mayor's also blocked my 15-year-old son. Now, if you asked my 15-year-old son about council, he'd say it's a complete waste of time and a joke. He has absolutely no interest in it at all. He's never said anything about the Mayor. I don't believe I've said anything on my personal Facebook page about the Mayor. So let's go both ways on this. That's what I said to start with. I want to work together as the publication in this area. I want to work together. I want to get the positive stories like we do with Yass and Goulburn and Wallandilly, get those positive stories out there. But I accept the premise of your question, and I'll add those comments as well.
Thank you. All right. Next we have Ms Jennifer Lee Clark is speaking for the recommendation in item 9.3, Council Tourism Policy.
Mayor, could we just call Councillor Moylan back into the room?
Good afternoon, Mayor and councillors. Thanks for hearing my point of view. I'd like to put forward that in Bowral we have a lot of tourists during our weekends, as we know, Friday, Saturday and Sunday. But I think it'd be great to be able to increase the volume of tourists to come to Bowral and the Southern Highlands, just to make it that little spot, so that more of the shopkeepers can actually gain some people coming down and shopping and different ways of getting them to have that. I think if shopkeepers were agreeable, if they offered a discount to people that came from, a certain place that is out of the jurisdiction, and that they would encourage them through the weekend. And also if they could do package tours, that they come here and they stay at least one night, and then they not just stay in the hotel, they give them a guided tour around here, and they have time to shop, time to eat somewhere else. There's so many great places, as you know. But I checked on some sites, and I saw that we only have 10 properties actually on some of our sites, that you can't stay for longer than the night, or on the weekend you have to stay 2 nights, as you know. But I think they should try and encourage that through the week to give more people more jobs, and just to spread our great place to more people. Because, like in South Australia, they've got great wineries like we have, and I think we're just as good as all of that, and we need to bring more people in on what we have got to offer. So that's my little thing.
Appreciate you coming
I've been in the tourist industry for a long time, and I just see what happens in all these different places throughout Australia. So, little towns.
Thank you. Thank you for coming along.
Thank you.
Councillor Russell.
Hi. Oops.
Thank you for coming and offering your advice to us. It's valuable. Have you seen, I'd be interested in hearing your feedback on any pathways, footpaths or cycleways, and how that encourages people to stay for more than one night often? Any experience you've had?
It does encourage people, but they're not really advertised anywhere else except here. That's what I find. There's not really, talking of social media, I mean, I'm on Facebook, but I only tick things that of interest to everyone here, so that it gets it out to my group of friends, and they have friends as well. I belong to a really big group of people, and I think that's the way of doing it. So social media does have a real need, but it has to be handled properly. So I actually don't have many friends on social media, but I know that my friends have social friends, so that just gets it out there. And I think, we just have to get our name out there more, and I think by offering some, better word, deals, that gets people down here through the week, and they stay and see the place and go to the wineries, lunch, and purchase things, because the stores are really struggling. Like people come down and they come with their husbands, and their husbands just stand outside the stores, and the women go in for a very short time, and that's it. Maybe the husbands could have a day at the pub, and the women go shopping.
Sounds good.
But, I'm trying to see all these different things that we're getting a bit close.
Is that a motion?
We just need to be more open with our advertising and things like that.
Okay.
That's.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councillor Motley.
Thank you, Mrs Clark, for coming along today and sharing your perspective from all your experience and knowledge in tourism. Would you say that local businesses and local tourism operators should have a big part of any tourism strategy that council does?
Yes, thanks, Sarah. That's what I am actually aiming at. I think that the hotels here, they're great, but they need to offer something else to people that through the week more than anything, because I know they've got the 2-day business, but you probably find that those people just stay in the hotel and they don't really get out and about. And that's what we've got to encourage. So that's why I say if you come from another area and you shop in, it can't be a chain store because they won't allow that type of thing. But if you just go and shop, say just in Dirty Jane's, let's say, and you get a 5% discount because you've come from Sydney or Melbourne or Canberra, it just brings a bit more of an interest, and then word of mouth that gets around, and it just increases the volume of interest in everything in this area.
Okay. Councillor Motley.
Thank you for that. And would you say what an opportunity is for us to have better connectivity between the villages and towns. So for your package idea, for people to be able to move from destination to destination in that package, a bus, for instance, or something like that.
I mean, that's how I would do it if I was doing this. I would package something that could be sold as a midweek escape for women only, maybe. And they have, you know, the ladies' long lunch down here, that type of thing. We have had it, I know, some time ago, but that type of thing encourages people. And those ladies then say, we went to such and we had a great time. So it gets out there again. It's just that multiplication of, that's what I can see needs to be done.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That concludes that. We'll have a 10-minute break. We'll kick off at 4:55.